Today, what was the top state story of the last 12 months? Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Morning, Michael.
Good morning, Adam Lang.
Good morning, Michael.
In just 5 minutes, we are each going to put forward the top state story from the last 12 months, and at the end, we are going to decide a winner. I reckon I've got a pretty good one this morning, so I'm going to go first. I reckon the biggest, the most important, the state story that people outside of this particular state would have actually cared about was former New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian and her very sudden resignation from the top job in September. It matters outside of New South Wales because New South Wales is the biggest state. It is the most important economically, and really, New South Wales was leading the way in the response to COVID. Up until that point, Gladys Berejiklian had been seen as a really safe pair of hands for New South Wales, guiding through the pandemic, really pushing New South Wales vaccination rates as the key to getting out of lockdown. But the state's anti-corruption watchdog ICAC announced an investigation into whether her secret relationship with disgraced MP Darryl Maguire constituted a conflict of interest. In a flurry of activity, Gladys Berejiklian resigned as Premier. Dominic Perrottet became the next Premier. The hearings that followed at ICAC were really pretty sordid. There were phone taps, lots of kind of intimate details came out. But it's really interesting to me that even after all of that, a survey found that 54% of New South Wales voters still like and still respect Gladys Berejiklian. For me, that's a big story because this brought down a Premier who was a really, really popular Premier.
Excellent start. Excellent start. Adam, what do you reckon?
Well, my story is almost at the other end of the scale, and this is about the preeminence of one of our premiers, and that is Mark McGowan from WA. So where do you start with WA? In 1901, WA barely agreed to federation, and there are
1901. We're talking 2021, 2022, Damsky, but go on.
Now, let me keep to my time limit here, Sean. We've got 1 minute. I plan to use it. In 1901, WA barely agreed to federation, and there are many generations down that might still want to unwind it. The WA state election was held on the 13th of March, 2021, and of the 59 seats in the Legislative Assembly, Labor won 53 of them for the 4-year term. That is amazing, but there is more. He's managed to do that while taking a very distinct approach to the federal government in dealing with COVID and managing to stay idolised by the state voters for it. Like it or not, Mark McGowan has served the interest of the voters of his state and is the most popular Premier in the country because of it.
It's good. But playing a very parochial game for a state Premier is pretty easy, really, isn't it?
You could throw Anastasia Palaszczuk into that camp too, I'd imagine.
You could, but she's not as popular as he is in WA.
She's not as popular as he is in WA, you're right, but he's not as popular as she is in Queensland. Let me give you my vote. Daniel Andrews. Now, who'd want to be Daniel Andrews this year? Let's face it. Started with the pandemic. He then, early in the year, fell down some stairs, injured his back really, really badly, and was off for a few months. He came back. He really was hated by business. There were riots in Melbourne. He had to front the media every single day. Somehow, he made it through all of that, and he ends the year really with quite strong popularity in his state. I don't think there's any doubt that he's the most influential Labor politician in the country. And that's why I think as we stand here today, that is the most important state story. Now, before I finish, having heard you two characters go on about Mark McGowan and Gladys Berejiklian, I'm going to throw a fourth option in. And maybe we're not supposed to do it, but I'm going to anyway.
Go for it.
The rise of state premiers this year. Gladys Berejiklian and Dominic Perrottet, Anastasia Palaszczuk, Mark McGowan, Daniel Andrews. All the leaders of the states and territories have had a far greater public profile, both in 2020 and 2021 as a result of the pandemic. This year, there's been a lot more squabbling between the feds and the states and between the states themselves. So I'm going to put forward a fourth option, which means we all get a third of a point. It's basically the state premiers and their influential role in the country as opposed to the feds.
I reckon we can do what the states can't and all agree on this and say that last story is probably the most profound difference from the last 12 months. Yep. So I reckon you're right, Sean.
It's
that is the top
Fear and Greed
story.
National Cabinet agreeing.
Adam's being very quiet right now. Do you agree, Adam?
Oh, look, I don't like sharing a win, but yes, I do agree. It is the biggest story.
Wonderful. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
And thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
And that's it for today. Make sure you've hit follow or subscribe on the podcast so that you get the next episode automatically. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast Five by Fear and Greed.